Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a look at something really fascinating. It's about how cities use their past to build their future.
Exactly. We have these incredible sources, mostly focused on Montreal, that show how the city is strategically turning these old economic power centers, these monumental buildings, into new cultural hubs.
Right, we're talking about more than just a renovation project.
Oh, much more. It's a deliberate shift in civic identity. The sources detail transformations of former banks, massive old factories, even churches that are no longer in use.
And our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack that. We want to get at the social forces behind it, understand the, frankly, huge financial hurdles, and then map out the real social impact of this whole from capital to culture shift.
And that's the core idea, this whole transformation. It's a huge driver of modern urban development. It's really a form of what you could call the democratization of space.
Democratization of space. I like that.
Think about it. You're taking a building that was designed to, say, restrict access to wealth, or a factory designed to control labor on a massive scale, and you're turning it into a place for everyone.
That's a powerful idea because in the 20th century, you really had these two titans of urban architecture, right? The bank, which stood for capital,
Pure capital.
and the factory, which stood for labor. And those are the very structures we're now seeing reinvented as, spaces for public creativity.
And they're almost perfectly suited for it. The sources make a big point of this. They have this incredible architectural richness, the high ceilings museums kill for, solid construction, amazing light.
They have, what's the quote, an ideal aura for art.
That's the one. An ideal aura for art.
So let's start with that first symbol, the bank. We've got a great case study in the Foundation Guido Molinari.
Yes. It's housed in a former branch of the Banque d'épargne de la Cité du District de Montréal, a real mouthful. And it's just a textbook example. It went from this formal, kind of intimidating institutional building to this open, accessible venue. It gets thousands of visitors a year.
So it completely changes the story of the building.
It flips the script from capital extraction to public cultural service.
Okay, but what about labor? The other side of that equation. For that, we're looking at the Grover Mills factory. Le Grover, as it's known.
Le Grover. Yeah, what an incredible history. It was built back in 1923 by Hyman Grover for his textile company.
Knit to fit.
Knit to fit, yeah. And you can just imagine it. I mean, the sources describe this intensive production of hats, scarves, sweaters, a massive industrial operation.
So what's that beacon of industry look like today?
Today, it's one of the most important hubs for artist studios in East Montreal. It's called a true creation incubator. It's just buzzing with visual artists, artisans.
Oh, it's not a museum.
No, and that's the critical distinction. It's not a static, finished space. It's a generator. It creates this constant working traffic, which means it ensures a lasting artistic presence. It's actively contributing to the creative economy.
That's such a key difference. Active, messy creation versus a quiet exhibit.
Exactly. And you see it elsewhere, too, like at La Fonderie Darling.
The Darling Foundry, another factory.
Yeah, former agricultural machinery factory. Now it's this world-class contemporary art center pulling in tens of thousands of visitors. It puts Montreal on the map using that raw industrial feel.
Before we move on, we have to touch on that third category, the churches. Because those seem like the trickiest ones to repurpose.
They are. I mean, the scale is often just monumental, and the architecture is so specific. And in Quebec, there were so many older, disused churches. It was a huge preservation challenge.
So who handles that?
That's where the Conseil du Patrimoine Religieux de Québec, the CPRQ, comes in. Their whole job is to manage these surplus places of worship and help transform them into community centers, cultural spaces.
So they guarantee their survival.
Their survival and their sort of social reintegration into modern life.
It's just a fascinating approach.
Yeah.
But it brings us to the biggest hurdle, right? The money.
The money. Yeah. This is where it gets really, really complicated.
Because repurposing these massive heritage buildings has to be just astronomically expensive.
It is extremely costly. I mean, from structural work to just getting them up to modern fire code. Public support isn't just helpful, it's absolutely essential.
Wait, there's a specific number in the sources that just jumped out at me. It says heritage restoration can be, 30 to 50% higher than just building something new?
That's right, 30 to 50%.
So why do it? I mean, why would the public get behind paying 50% more?
Because these buildings are seen as collective assets. They're part of the city's soul, its shared history. If you tear down Le Grover, you lose something you can never get back.
So it's an investment in identity.
Exactly. The sources argue it's necessary because these projects add to the collective well-being in a way that, a standard private development just wouldn't prioritize.
Okay, so that's the why. But how does it actually work? I mean, we're talking tens of millions of dollars.
Right. A small nonprofit can't just write that check. So Quebec's strategy is all about layering. It combines provincial, federal, and municipal programs. You never rely on just one source.
So what's the first lever they pull?
The first one is usually what's called the building envelope, the outside, the structure itself,
The bones of the building.
the bones. There's a
Yeah.
provincial program for that. The Programme de soutien au milieu municipal en patrimoine immobilier. It pays for the heavy stuff, masonry, roofing, foundation work.
And the government's commitment here is pretty serious.
Very serious. They recently injected a ton of money into it, bringing the total support to nearly $52 million in one funding cycle. And for cultural nonprofits, this aid can cover up to 60% of those exterior costs.
60%. Okay, that's a massive weight off their shoulders. But that's just the outside.
Yeah.
What about the inside? How do you turn a bank vault into an archive?
Right. For that, you have separate cultural infrastructure programs. These are all about the functional transformation. You're combining provincial aid, which is called PADIC, with federal funds from a program called FCEC.
PADIC and FCEC, and those are for the interior layout.
Precisely. And by stacking these funds, a nonprofit can get aid that covers up to 80% of the eligible expenses for that internal work.
80%.
80%. That completely changes the game. It makes these incredibly complex transformations financially possible.
It's a huge incentive.
Yeah.
And for the churches, they have their own special fund, right? With a really high ceiling.
They do. It's managed by the CPRQ, and it just shows that the government recognizes the sheer scale of those projects. The repurposing part of that fund can cover 50 to 70% of the costs, up to a ceiling of $5 million per project.
5 million.
Per project, yeah. It acknowledges how uniquely complex it is to turn a sacred space into a public one.
And the city of Montreal itself even steps in for certain buildings. The sources mention a program for old cinemas and theaters.
That's right. The city offers up to a 60% subsidy with $1 million ceiling, specifically to help nonprofits restore those kinds of buildings.
So when you add it all up, the $52 million for the structure, 80% for the inside, $5 million for churches.
You see a very clear picture. This isn't just charity. It's a strategic public policy. The goal is to preserve heritage by making it useful again.
Which brings us to the third part,
Yeah.
the social return. Because this is where all those numbers turn into, actual change for people.
Absolutely. The real return isn't financial, it's social. It all comes back to our main theme, taking a symbol of capital, a symbol of power, and making it accessible to everyone.
That's the democratization of space we talked about.
It's the ultimate form of it, a free gallery, a community gathering place. It fundamentally changes the public's relationship with that architecture.
And these cultural venues, they also act as anchors in their neighborhoods, right? Like the Molinari Foundation in Hochelaga.
A perfect example. It anchors the neighborhood's identity. It promotes arts education right there on the street. It gives the local community a real sense of pride and ownership.
But the sources also point out a really delicate balance here.
They do. This anchoring effect, it has a complicated side effect. The source suggests that this cultural presence can act as a kind of a gentle lever against gentrification.
A gentle lever.
But, and this is a huge, but only if the housing around it stays affordable. It's a balancing act. If the cultural anchor makes the neighborhood too desirable too fast.
The very people the art is supposed to serve get priced out.
Exactly. It's a real urban planning challenge.
Still, the alternative is often just letting these amazing buildings decay or be demolished.
Right. So repurposing is really the best guarantee for their survival. It ensures Montreal's architectural heritage lives on.
And that heritage itself becomes an economic asset.
It does. The sources note that the rarity of these huge historic spaces is now a selling point. You just can't build things with that kind of character anymore. It really proves that the wealth of a city is measured by the strength of its creativity, not just its bank accounts.
So, wrapping this all up, what's the big takeaway here? We've seen that Montreal is using this massive, layered public investment strategy to turn its old, heavy infrastructure into these vibrant, accessible cultural hubs.
And the results are pretty clear. You get these strong social and architectural anchors, you boost the neighborhood's attractiveness through real cultural activity, and you make culture accessible to tens of thousands of people who can now just walk into buildings that were once closed off to them.
It really is a success story, a story of urban planning that values memory and community. But, as we just discussed, there's a challenge, kind of a paradox, baked right into the strategy.
Yes. And this is the final, really provocative thought the sources leave you with. We know these renovations are vital, but they're also super expensive, right? 30 to 50% more than building new. And we know that this huge public investment makes the neighborhood more attractive. So that raises the big question. When turning capital into culture costs so much and is so successful, how can a city use it as a gentle lever, without that success inevitably threatening the long-term affordability for the very community the art is supposed to serve?
It's the ultimate paradox of cultural development.
It is. The success itself might actually contain the seeds of displacement.
A paradox that really proves just how complex true urban renewal is. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.